Okay, let's get started. So just a reminder, the new syllabus, right? Remember, we made some changes, just so you remember. We finished Kierkegaard today. Next time is all of Buber, right? So make sure you read both readings. And then the week after is Irigaray, and that's it. And I have just put up the text of Irigaray on Blackboard, the PDF, so you don't have to pay $40. Some of you bought the book already? Yeah. That's good. It's a good book. It's really worth having. So don't worry. It wasn't wasted. Okay, good. All right. So last time we were left in the suspense, right? We were in this difficult relationship. We found out about the existence of this inner lake, right? That's our inner spring, inner source that we could connect to. And in order to be able to receive nourishment and strength in the difficult situation we were in. And then I left you hanging, right, as to how we can connect to this lake, to this deep inner source, which Kierkegaard names God within, right? So, and again, right, even though Kierkegaard is using Christian language, he's describing a human experience. Let's remember that, right? He's doing philosophy. And remember, right, we talked about these two dimensions, that we have the physical dimension and the metaphysical dimension. And the difference between Kierkegaard and Plato is what? Where does Kierkegaard situate the metaphysical dimension? Unlike Plato. Remind me. Yes, exactly. Right, for Plato, you have to escape reality. You have to go beyond reality to find the metaphysical dimension. Kierkegaard is an existentialist, right? And so for him, the more you enter reality, the more you connect to this dimension, right? So this is already giving us a hint how we're going to connect to this divine part of us, right? It's not going to be, about praying and meditating and, kind of rising above. No, the deeper we penetrate reality, make sure you write this down. For the existentialists, and Kierkegaard is part of this, the deeper you penetrate into reality, the closer you connect, the closer you come to this deeper dimension, right? This is not about escaping or rising above or, taking a break from reality, right? This is the more you live. And I'll say today, we're going to see today, the more you love, the more you're going to connect to this. Okay, so today, yes, Jimbo. Yes, what did I say? So there's two dimensions, physical, metaphysical, right? And we saw that for Plato, to access the metaphysical dimension, you have to leave reality, right? You have to rise above reality. And the existentialists say, no, actually, you have to enter reality. The deeper you penetrate into reality, the more you live, the more you love, the closer you're going to come to connecting to this part within us, to this divine part, or what Kierkegaard calls the eternal, right? Let's go into brief terminology, right? I talked about the physical, the metaphysical. Kierkegaard names the physical the temporal, which has to do with time, right? Temporal, T-E-M-P-O-R-A-L, right? This is the temporal realm. This is the physical, material realm. And then there's this deeper realm, right? Which is metaphysical, beyond the physical, which he calls the eternal. So let's be very clear. The eternal for Kierkegaard is not some kind of afterlife. It's not some kind of, thing that happens to you in paradise, right? It's not heaven. The eternal can be accessed here and now. It's within us for Kierkegaard. All of us for Kierkegaard are temporal beings inhabited by the eternal. Who said this? Somebody said this in poetry earlier in the semester, that we are temporal beings inhabited by the eternal. This should remind you right away of a quote that we read. Yes, what was the quote? And then we can... Good. Who's that? Solomon? Was it you? Where in Solomon? Okay, it was Rumi actually. Anybody remember the quote? Mewala? Yes. What was in the water jar? Yes. Okay, so you see how these philosophers are all kind of stumbling on the same truth, right? Or the same intuition, right? Because we can't demonstrate this, but this is the same intuition across the centuries, across, right, geographically. You have philosophers stumbling on the idea that we are material beings inhabited by a metaphysical substance, that we are temporal beings inhabited by the eternal, right? And we'll see today that, and of course the question, right, that remains, how do we connect to this eternal? How do we connect to this deep dimension of grace, of strength, of light, which for Kierkegaard resides within each one of us, right? So that was the question I left you on. And today we're going to figure it out. And we're going to see that just like a pure, genuine existentialist is going to be by penetrating more deeply into life, by living more deeply, by loving more deeply, and more specifically, anybody know what the text was on today? What was the main thing that the text was about? Yes. Yes, but what was the action that Kierkegaard is talking about throughout this? It's in the title. Yes, you're close. Well, hope, by hoping. Okay, so actually we're going to talk about this today. For Kierkegaard, you accessing this deeper dimension doesn't mean you have to become a Christian, doesn't mean you have to start meditating or praying or, you know, doing some kind of yoga, whatever. No, accessing this deeper dimension, accessing all of the resources of the eternal, connecting to this source of strength and nourishment and power, right? I want to emphasize power, right? You can do so by taking a particular attitude in your situation, right? So you don't have to be a Christian to do this. Anybody can do this, right? You take a particular attitude, and this attitude is that of hope. So we're going to look today, what does it mean to hope? And how does hope connect us to this? How does hope, in a way, what is the power of hope, right? Because he's going to talk about hope very different from wishful thinking. Right? Wishful thinking is you're sitting in this terrible situation and you're like, man, I wish things would be better. I wish we could go on a cruise. I wish we could just end this, right? Wishful thinking. Hope is very different. We're going to study hope, and we're going to see how when you adopt this attitude, when you adopt this posture, when you have the courage to engage in this work of love, which is hope, you are going to begin to tap into this deeper dimension of yourself, and amazing things will begin to happen once you do, right? So let's look at that. Let's look at what is this hope. So I'm on page 237. Here we have a definition, actually. So we're going to analyze this definition and see what it means for us. Okay, second paragraph, 237. This is what it means to hope all things. Who is with me? Raise your hand. 1, 2. Okay, good. This is what it means to hope all things. But in love, to hope all things signifies the lover's relationship to other men. So first thing we learn is that hope is an act of love, right? Hope is not just something you do because you're thinking, oh man, I wish. No, hope is actually a gesture of love. It's a work of love. It's a way of showing love. So we're going to see what else. We also know from this brief sentence, right, that hope is relational. Hope is not just about me. Hope is relational. We're going to see what that means. He explains that in relationship to them, hoping for them, he continually keeps possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. Okay, so it sounds like a tongue twister. So let's analyze what he's trying to say there. Okay, first thing we learn, hope is always hoping for someone. So hope is never about myself. It's never about you. Right? Hope is always about the person you're with. That's the first thing. Let's talk about that a little bit, right? And let's talk about what that means. So first of all, right, you're in a difficult situation. You're struggling in the relationship. It's chaos. It's difficult. There's some maybe abuse and so forth, and you don't know what to do. First reaction is you want to hope for yourself. I hope you get better so I can feel happier. Please fix yourself so I can be happy, right? This is the first, right? I'm not happy. You need to do something about this. That's the first reaction we have. We will go to our beloved and be like, I'm not happy. Please change, right? This is not hope. And then you're sitting here, longing for them to change so that you can be happy. This is not hope. Hope is always hoping for them. So what does this mean to hope for someone? Can anyone tell me? Yes. Yeah.
Is it possible to hope for someone, but to also, is it possible to have hope for somebody, let's say, in a toxic relationship? Is it possible to have hope with the abuser that they change for your own sanity or hope?
So we're going to see. We're not left out of the equation, right? We're going to see how that works. But let's first figure out what does it mean to hope for someone, and then you'll see how the self comes back in. The self is still there. So what does it mean? Let's try to. So let's imagine. Let's have a scenario. Let's say your beloved has a problem with addiction, a terrible problem, or gambling. Anything. Addiction to gambling, addiction to porn, addiction to drugs, whatever, alcohol. You're dealing with addiction. This is a big deal. right? What does it mean to hope for them? Obviously, you're miserable, right? But what does it mean to hope for them? Yes. And yes, for whose sake? Yes, who said that? Who said that? Very good, very good. So you're not only hoping for them, you're also hoping for you. But why are you hoping for you? Because then I can love you, because then we can be good, because then the relationship will survive, right? So you're always hoping beyond yourself. Anytime you're hoping for yourself, it's like, I want you to deal with this so I can love you more, so we can be good, right? So anytime you're hoping for the other, you're included there, because I want to be able to love you. I want to be able to give myself to you, but right now I can't. There's this element that is blocking my love for you. So please, let's work on this so that not only you feel better, but I feel better, so that you can feel better. Does that make sense? So you're always thinking beyond the self, right? So even if you're thinking of, I need to be happier, you're thinking for the sake of the relationship, like Tawhid said very accurately, right? This is for the sake of the relationship. You need to love me in this way, so that I can love you better, so that we can fix this, right? So that's the first thing. So first thing you can write down about hope, it's always about the other person. It's an act of love. I see more in you. That's what you're saying about the other, right? Yes. You haven't been around, so you haven't followed the evolution of the class, clearly. We can tell. But yes, we deal with that. We are already over here. Most of the class, you see how you laugh at him? You used to think like that. See how you changed, right? Sorry, Tawhid. See how you collectively changed? You're smiling at him. You would never have thought that you would smile at a comment like that, right? So I see that you have evolved, and I'm very proud of you, right? Very good. No, so yes, to go back to you, it's Govitz, right? So obviously, right, but you see that the end of it should be for the sake of the other, because most of us, we will literally break up with a person because we're like, I'm not happy, therefore I'm out, right? Here you're saying, look, you need to be happy, but I also need to be happy for your sake. You see what I mean? You're not thinking to the end of the happiness is not for you to feel good. The end of it is the relationship. That's your ultimate goal. Does that make sense? You're not convinced. Okay, so let's continue analyzing the sentence, because you're missing a few elements which are here. Yes, Ramos.
What if you have more hope than the other person? Like you hope for them to sort of change, but they don't have that hope in themselves.
That's the point. They're the withered tree, right? So there's nothing coming from them, right? We are talking strictly here of connecting to our own source and how to do that, right? We have lost hope in the other person, right? So the other person here is really, they have fallen, right? They have fallen by the wayside, and now what do you do? That's the question. And we were talking last time, we were talking about connecting to this dimension so we can have the resources to be nourished, right? And then to address the situation. So you guys are jumping forward. Let's go further. Let's continue, because it's still incomplete. So first of all, we know that's the first thing you write down. Hope is not about us. It's first and foremost for the sake of the other, for the sake of their well-being, or for the sake of the relationship in which you are somewhat included. But then he continues. This is what it means. To continually keeps the possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. Okay, so let's look at that. What does it mean to be partial? When you're partial to somebody. Suppose you have two siblings and you tend to be partial to one of the siblings. What does it mean? Yes.
Make a comparison. It's like when you look at Soren, there was that concept of both parties kind of not only being selfish, but choosing to make the option that would benefit them more rather than.
Okay, absolutely. When you're partial to someone, you are giving them priority. You're giving them preference. Okay, that's what it means to be partial. Okay, make sure you write this down, because that's the word here, partiality, right? So when you're partial to something or to someone, what does it mean? It means to give them preference, to lean more heavily in their direction than in someone else's direction, right? Now, knowing this, what does it mean to keep possibility open with infinite partiality for the possibility of the good. What does it mean? You're looking at someone and you're being partial to the possibility of the good. What is he trying to say? Yes.
Even when someone is a withered tree, you have to remain, like, you have to have the possibility in your mind that that person can still be, still live.
Okay, very good. Yeah, is that what you were going to say? Okay, very good. Partiality means you put preference over a positive outcome than a negative outcome. You know how you look at someone? Usually we put preference on the negative outcome. Yeah, you're always going to be like this. You're never going to satisfy me. You're always going to cheat. You're always going to, right? We tend to be partial for the possibility of the bad. That is the natural reaction. When we're dealing with somebody difficult, we tend to become very pessimistic. Kierkegaard is saying, no, you need to discipline yourself to shift your perspective and your stance to becoming partial for the possibility of the good. This is hard. This is an actual turning of your gaze, of your perspective towards the possibility of the good. Therefore, what you're doing basically is, I'm looking at you and I'm focusing on the good. I'm focusing on everything you could become. That's the element of possibility of the good, right? So make sure you write this down. To be partial for the possibility of the good, what does it mean? It means I'm focusing on all the good that you could become. I'm focusing on everything that you could be, that I am seeing right now in you. I'm focusing on that. I'm seeing it, in fact, in you, and I'm gazing and envisioning it, and I'm speaking it forth, right? I am calling it out. I'm looking at you. We saw this also with Rumi. Remember when I told you love isn't blind, right? Let me just destroy that myth that love is blind. What is love? What did I say when I said love is not blind when we talked about Rumi? Anybody remember? What is love if it's not blind? When Rumi talks about the ocean in the water jar, right? And I said, see, this text tells us love isn't blind. Yes, Alonso. Exactly. Rather than it's blind, it looks blind to the other people around you who are blind themselves. Love is a deeper perception. So you are seeing what people are not seeing. Why? Because you love. And love opens the intelligence, right? And so you look blind to others, but actually you're seeing more deeply. This is exactly what Kierkegaard is saying, right? Look at the other person and see the potential for the good that is there. You're not inventing it. You're actually seeing it. You're perceiving it. And that's what it means to hope, right? Any questions so far? It should be getting clearer. Yes? You're not inventing, you're seeing it, right?
And that it would be
the
deeper layer of the person that you're with.
Yes, and the deeper layer, which is good, right? Because there's deeper layers which are evil. We all know that, right? So you're focusing on the good, right? So that's what it means to hope, right? And then notice, right? This is interesting. Continually you're doing this. This is not easy, right? You're continually choosing to shift your gaze from the possibility of bad to the possibility of good, right? You're continually doing this with infinite partiality, right? Okay, so we have the definition of hope, right? Okay, now we can work with that. So now you can see, first of all, right, and actually let's look at one quote which really highlights what this looks like to look at someone in this way. Go to page 238, the second paragraph. And here he's comparing the gaze of despair to the gaze of hope, right? He's comparing the attitude of despair to the attitude of hope. And most of us, to be honest, we fall immediately, the default is despair. And he's saying shift. And he's giving some reasons why we should do that. So read together. It is possible, says despair. It is possible that even the most sincere enthusiast nevertheless becomes weary, gives up the struggle, sinks into the service, right? So he's saying even the most passionate person, this is despair speaking, can lose their passion. Continuing. It is possible, I'm skipping a bit, right? I'm trying to read, I can't see very well in this slide. Let me just read the whole thing. It is possible that even the deepest believer nevertheless at some time abandons faith, right? So this is again the look of despair. It is possible that even the most burning love at some time cools off and is chilled, right? Even the most beautiful relationship can go bad. And that's what despair sees. And by the way, despair sees correctly. This is all true, right? Then he continues. It is possible that even the best friend can become changed into an enemy, even the most faithful wife into a perjurer. It is possible. Therefore, despair, give up hope. Henceforth, do not hope all things in any man or for any man. And he admits it. He says, yes, indeed, this certainly is possible. But then he adds, the opposite is also possible. You see, every person is 50-50. And basically what Kierkegaard is about to tell us is that it is your gaze which tilts the scales. Let me say that again. Every person is 50-50. And it's your gaze on them that will tilt the scales towards the good. Everyone has both good and evil. If you focus on the evil will grow. However, if you focus on the good will grow, right? Yes. Yes, I suppose so. This is do you all know, I'm going to butcher this, but there's a story in Buddhism. Yeah, I think I remember it. You know this. I'm sure we brought it up already. This is a story. This is a monk who tells his disciple that every man is inhabited by a wolf, by a wild animal, and by, oh gosh, what was it? I thought I had this. Every human being is inhabited by an evil animal and a good animal, or maybe by an evil wolf and a good wolf. And so the disciple is asking, well, which one wins, right? Which one is going to win? And they're warring against each other in our souls. And which one wins? And the monk replies, the one that you feed is going to win. If you feed the wolf, is going to win. If you feed the other being, which is, I don't know, a being of light or whatever, it's going to win. This is what Kierkegaard is saying. Both, we have potential for both. And it is your gaze which can actually tilt the balance. Let's see him say that here. But the opposite is also possible. Therefore, he says, because the opposite is also possible, never in unlovingness give up a person or give up hope for him. For it is possible, now watch what he does, that even the most prodigal son can still be saved. That the most embittered enemy, he who was your friend, it is still possible that he can again become your friend. It is possible that he who has sunk the deepest, it is still possible that he can be raised up again. And it is still possible that love, which has turned cold, can burn again. Therefore, never give up any man, not even at the last moment. Do not despair. No hope, all things, right? So to some of us, so we're reading this, and I'm sure some of you are already thinking this, well, if he wants to delude himself in this way, right? Go on, delude yourself that this man or this woman is going to change, right? And so we have to talk at this point beyond just hope being an act of love. We have to look at hope as a force, as a transformative force. So this is the second thing that I'm going to talk about today. So first, we have just seen now hope is an expression of love. It's a way of gazing on the beloved and seeing the good in the beloved. This is an act of love. But it's going to be delusional if we cannot prove that it is also transformative. In other words, hope is not just, wishful thinking. It has an impact. Hope can have an impact. Hope is a force. It is not just, an energy. It can have an effect on the relationship. And this is what I'm going to talk about now. Yes, God bless you. That's a good question. Can you keep that question till because I want to address it. This is a really good question. I like it a lot. Yes, keep it. Don't forget. Okay, good. Okay, so let's look now beyond just hope being an expression of love, beyond just hope being, gazing at the good of the beloved and seeing the good, the potential for good. Hope also can have an effect. And I think I want to pause here and really emphasize this. I don't think we have an inkling of how powerful love can be, and especially love expressed as hope. I don't think we are aware of the power that we hold in our gaze and in our words, right? The power to shift not only a destiny, but the whole course of a relationship. And I think this is what he's about to reveal to us. So first of all, there's two arguments for hope as having transformative power, not only on the person you're dealing with, but on yourself and on the relationship. Transformation is you, them, everything, right? Okay, first let's look at the psychological and then at the metaphysical. So I'll give you first a kind of mundane, like day-to-day example. So I used to teach in elementary school in my hell days before I met you guys who are wonderful. I was teaching 8th grade. Let me tell you, it was the worst experience of my life. It scarred me because I worship the people who teach 8th graders. Like this. You guys are great. I love you. So anyways, as I was teaching these crazy kids, I was teaching them English of all things. It was horrible. Anyways, I learned a thing or two about, adolescent psychology. And what I noticed is that when you have a kid who's really a dummy in class, I mean, absolute dummy, like they can't do anything. Like it's like, you're like, I don't know why you're in school, and you feel tempted to say that. There's actually a way you can completely turn around their grades. Anybody know how? No, it's no. They're dumb, remember? Even they're trying, but they're stupid. They're literally stupid. I'm serious. Like they can't do it. They want to. So rewards, they're still stupid. So how are you going to turn things? Can you turn things around? What do you think? Some of you haven't learned a thing. What else? What else? Anybody have any ideas?
That's just the fear of their parents, I guess.
You can what?
The fear of their parents.
No, they're really trying, but they're stupid. I mean, what can you do? Yes. Yes. You start telling them, wow, you're pretty good at this. I like it. Nice work. Yeah, I like that. You say it, they begin to believe it. Their intelligence kicks in. I swear by God, this happened. I've seen it. Yes. You were gonna what?
I was gonna wait till you.
Okay, yes. There's an experiment that was made in a public school in line with this, right? These official looking, people of the Department of Education came in a classroom once and they said, listen, we want to test your students, pinpoint the brightest, and then send them to give them special help so they can really achieve their potential. Okay, so the kids knew this. You're going to take a test. We're going to take out the brightest of you, and then you're going to have specialized education, and we're going to really try to enhance your, we don't want you to sync with these other kids, right? We want you to push you forward. So the kids took the test. They found, right, the geniuses in the classroom, and then, they started to give them special care. They knew they were kind of the top tier, right? And they went on and on, graduated from high school, went on to college, had amazing careers. And then it was discovered, I forget how, maybe a leak. Anybody know what they discovered? It's great. It's a true story. What did they discover about this whole thing that they did, this whole experiment? No? Y'all are really into cheating, aren't you? Yes.
That they weren't the high score.
Yes, exactly. It was, they had told those kids, you're the geniuses, but actually they weren't. They were kind of the lower tier, but they kind of flipped it and they said, you guys are the geniuses. And the kids became the geniuses and they achieved outstanding careers just because they thought, right? Or somebody threw them a gaze, looked at them and said, you are a genius. And they became a genius. Yeah. Yes, that's because it's not the gaze there, it's the pushing, right? It's different because they really push them, they have no time. So here's just a question of the gaze, right? If you look at someone with a certain gaze, and this experiment, you can look it up and somebody can find me the link would be good because I probably didn't explain it right, but I think you get the gist, right? The way you see someone can actually call forth those things in them. If you see the good in them, you can call it forth. You have the power to call it forth with your gaze and with your words. There is power in your gaze and there's power in your words. And we are not aware. And we can, by the way, the opposite is true. You can destroy someone with your gaze and you can destroy someone with your words. And Kierkegaard, basically what he's saying is that when you gaze at someone, when you look at someone and you see the good in them, you can actually, psychologically, it's been proven, you have the power to call it forth. The way you see it, when you see it and speak it, it actually can begin to blossom under your gaze and under your words. So we have seen evidence that this works, what Kierkegaard is talking about. Yes?
It's funny because when you were trying to study, I thought you were going to say the same thing I was going to say. And I don't know the actual name of the study or when it was done, but they did a similar study about confirmation bias, which is basically about stereotypes and how they actually harm kids in school, and about how women will do worse on science tests and African Americans kids will do worse on tests when they are told beforehand that they will do bad. So they had a control group and then an experimental group, and the experimental group they announced before the test, hey, it's just known that girls do worse on these tests.
And boom,
all the girls did worse on the tests.
Yes, excellent. Same idea. This is a reverse idea, right? Whatever you say, whatever you see, you can bring it forth. This is, I don't know if you realize the power of your gaze and the power of your speech, right? We have the power to create in somebody a new persona. You can create out of nothing through your gaze and through your speech. You can change the course of somebody's destiny by the way you look at them. This is what Kierkegaard is talking about, right? We need to be aware of the power of our gaze and of our speech, the power we have to call forth in somebody the good that we see there. Yes.
What if it's like a situation that you have no control
What do you mean?
So like hypothetically, you take a college class, right? You missed half of the class, and then your professor comes talks to you, and he's like, they tell you could get an A in the class, but because you missed half of the assignments, there's no way you can really get an A.
Yeah, so this is not a magic wand, right? Right, obviously, so suppose, I mean, obviously, right? But this is the best course of action you can have, right? So this can be the beginning. Obviously, if your professor tells you you were good, you could have gotten an A. Now the part that you need to do with this self-confidence is to actually work to get an A, right? This is the idea of really awakening it. But then the person obviously has to go through and change, right? But you can awaken, you can jumpstart this shift, right? We cannot breathe instead of someone else, right? We cannot act or speak instead of someone else, but we can kindle something in them that gives them the will to change their direction. And the kindling is done through the gaze. Does that make sense? So obviously you can't stop the addiction instead of them. Like, although sometimes I'm tempted to, just kidnap certain people, tie them up and then sit them and just fix them, right? You can't do that, but you can kindle in them the desire to change. And that's what hope does, right? Yeah, good. That's a good question. So that's on the, and then we have, of course, we studied in the Song of Songs, to go back to what Tauhid was saying. We have an example of this in the Song of Songs. Anybody remember who had hope and who succeeded? Yes, the woman. It reminds us because it's been a long time.
She was resistant at first, but then slowly she understood and sort of like gave up her sort of control over him, and as she gave up her control over him, he sort of bounced back into her.
But it's not just that, right? She didn't just give up control. She did something else.
She also gave
She chose him, right? Yes. She what?
It's like she allowed the man to like eat his own.
Yes, she allowed him. There were two things, right? This is a great review for the test that some of you failed, right? This is a great review. Not only she let him go, but she also kept in her heart, she chose, right? She chose him to be her own in her heart, right? So she kind of put her apples in the same basket, right? She made a commitment to be with him. No matter what he's doing, I'm going to be here, right? So that's hope, right? So we've seen it already in the books that we read in the Song of Songs. This woman, she hopes for this man, and it's somehow, right, in the text, we see how this magnetizes, right, the man back to her. So again, this is not a magic wand. This is simply this has the potential to kindle something in the person. Then, of course, it is up to the person to move towards this light that you have kindled, right? But if you do not kindle anything, then nothing will happen. So at least we can kindle, and then it is up to the person. So we also have the metaphysical, now a philosophical explanation of this. So this was the psychological explanation. We also have the philosophical explanation. So what Kierkegaard is going to tell us in this section is that this is precisely connected to what we talked about with the inner source, right? What Kierkegaard is going to say, when you hope, you are actually, as you're hoping, connecting to your source. Now we're getting clearly into this issue of the how to connect to the source. Let's look at the quote and explain it. He says this on page 233. 233. Go to the fourth paragraph where it begins to hope all things. Who is with me? Okay. 233. Fourth paragraph, it starts to hope all things. And then right in the middle of that paragraph on the right, you have hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. Everybody sees that? Okay, just underline that. We're going to comment that. Hoping is composed of the eternal and the temporal. Basically, what Kierkegaard is saying is, as you're hoping for the person, meaning you are bearing this fruit of love, like a tree. Let's go back to the metaphor of the tree, right? As you're hoping, you're reaching with your branches into the possibility of the good. What is happening to a tree as the branches reach out? To the roots. What is happening to the root system as the branches reach out? Anybody know? Biology majors? Do the roots stay the same as the branches are reaching out? The roots go deeper. There's a simultaneous, right? You do this. It goes like this, right? The tree. So as you're hoping, right, you're reaching for the infinite possibility of the good. You're seeing beyond reality. You're reaching up in a way. Actually, deep down, you're also reaching down to this dimension. That's what is happening, right? If you want to look at the metaphor of the tree. Now, let me explain in ordinary language, right? As you begin to hope for someone, seeing the best in them, disciplining yourself to see the best in them, calling forth the best in them, meaning loving them, right? What is actually going to happen is you're going to connect to a part of yourself you didn't know existed. Let me say that again. As you begin to practice hope, what Kierkegaard is telling us is that you're going to start to connect to a part of yourself you didn't know existed. You're going to start to feel more love for that person. You're going to start to feel more inspired about the relationship. You're going to start to have ideas how you can talk to this person, what tone to use, what to say, when to say it. Doors will start opening in the outside world where you will see, here's a possibility for us, let's do it. Here's a possibility for you, and so forth, right? This is what Kierkegaard is promising. The moment you start to hope, things will begin to open. You will begin to connect to this deeper source of wisdom, of love, of strength, and of courage, right? And this happens automatically for Kierkegaard, right? As you connect to the temporal, as you're reaching into the heavens, your root system is going deeper into this dimension. And you are now beginning to receive the love that you need, the strength that you need, the wisdom that you need, right? And this happens automatically for Kierkegaard. As you love in that way, which is very profound love, you will actually receive that love. This is actually interesting because the laws of the spiritual laws are different from material laws. If I were to pour the water from this bottle, would I have any water left in my bottle? You're used to being tricked. But bless you a little bit. If I go completely, all gone, right? Okay. In the spiritual laws, it's totally the opposite. The more you pour, the more filled the bottle is. Remember this. You will need this information when you are in this difficult situation. In the physical, make sure you got this, right? In the physical laws in the physical realm of the universe, the more I pour, the less I have. Okay, let me say that again. In the physical realm, the more I pour, the less I have. In the spiritual realm, the more I pour, the more I have. That's what Kierkegaard is saying. The more you pour out your love in this act of hope, the more you see the good, the more you really focus on that, the more filled you will become. The more you love, the more full you are. The more you give love, the more love you are realizing is inside of you. That's what it means. Are you following this? Because this is really powerful. This is actually true. I have lived it. I know it's true, right? If you love just a little, you won't feel much love. But if you love very deeply, why is it called deep? Because all of a sudden you realize, oh my God, I have all of this in me that I didn't even know was there. The more you have to love, the more you will become filled with love. The deeper you have to love, the deeper you will go within yourself. You will come out of this experience. This is why difficult relationships, in a way, have an opportunity. Because when you love someone that difficult and you're able to continuously love them, you will discover realms of spirit within yourself that you didn't even know existed. You will tap into parts of yourself that were dormant. This will awaken parts of yourselves that you didn't even know were there. Am I making sense? Yes, Poplas. What? Yes. Let's go to your question now.
So how, it was something along the lines of what the person can do. It's physically and emotionally, it's just impossible for it to change.
Yeah.
But yet you still can do it.
Because you're changing, right? As you're pouring out, you're becoming full. And at that moment, doesn't matter who they are, right? Because you're full. This is the, I know it's hard to understand because if you haven't lived it, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, right? But this is, you can be in a situation where the other is dead spiritually and emotionally, right? No, they're still there, sadly. They're still there, right? And you can feel vibrant and alive and at peace, right? Because you have tapped into that deeper realm. And how you tap into it is by loving. The more you love, the more you have love, basically. So the way to be nourished is to nourish. That's the idea, right? The way to be nourished is to nourish, is to continuously nourish the other. That is how you will begin to tap into that. So now let's stop a little bit. Let's ponder this, right? Let's see if you have any questions, objections. Now is the time to really reflect on this. This is what he says, right? Let's see if you can now process this and really see if this is something that feels possible or that feels problematic. I want to hear you now. Yes. Of what? Oh gosh, explain. I'm curious. Go ahead. No, I think you're onto something. No, go ahead. No, I think you're onto something.
Basically, the process of photosynthesis for plant life is that in order for them to nourish themselves, what they do is they sort of absorb the sunlight and the water that comes down from the rain, and they sort of absorb it within themselves in order to nourish it because they don't have mouths.
Right.
The only way to sort of nourish themselves is that they take the sun rays and absorb that, and then they also take rainwater and they absorb it through the
So as they're up here, it's nourishing the root system. Actually, it's connected. We have to look more deeply into that. But I think you're onto something, because I remember vaguely to my classes on photosynthesis that I was kind of surprised that as they are feeding up here, it's pushing down. That's the idea. The more you're giving, the more you're reaching through hope, the deeper your roots are going. I think that's the idea. Anything else? Yes, Alonso. Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Initially, yes, you feel empty because you have put the source of your love in your partner, right? But, and you're not aware of your own source, right? That's why you feel empty. And the only way to feel full when your partner is dead, right, is to connect to that source, which is there. And the way to do that is you just love, you continue to love. And it's not just love, like, giving him breakfast. It's the vision you have to develop. That's the vision that nourishes you. You see what I mean? As you develop this vision and you start to see the good and you start to express gratitude for the good that's there, it will nourish you and it will nourish them. You see what I mean? So it's not just about continuing, the grind and just like, doing stuff for them and kind of, serving them and, allowing them. It's about developing this vision. That's the key. As you develop this vision and you start to see the good, you express the good, you thank them for the good, you are actually not only nourishing a part of them, but you're nourishing a part of you actually through that vision. Does that make sense? So you feel empty because you are looking at the situation with despair, and so you're becoming depleted by your own despair, right? What makes us feel empty? Oh, he's never gonna change. It's always gonna be like this, and the more you despair, the more it drains you. It's not the other that's draining you. It's your despair that's draining you. You see what I mean? And so to be nourished, you start to nourish yourself with your own hope, as well as nourishing them and ultimately the relationship. Does that make sense? So this is not about being complacent and a victim and just sticking it out and staying there and, enduring. You're actually really, you're shifting something in your eyes, which is shifting everything else, right? So this is anything but submission and victimhood, right? Even though you're there and everybody's looking at you like, she's crazy. Why is she there? You know what you're doing. You know what I mean? Good question. Anything else? Yeah, yes.
Does that work if that other person, okay, say you're pouring all this love out and everything, but they're pouring the opposite out? And does that
So be careful. This is you betray yourself. You're pouring love. It's not about pouring love. It's about the vision, right? Because it doesn't help at all when someone is an abuser to continue to serve them, right? Oh, I gave you food and I continue to make your bed and I continue to whatever, right? This doesn't help. What helps is, can you change your vision on that person? Can you start to see the good in them, which is there? Everyone, even Hitler, right? Had some good sides, right? Can you change your vision? And then, by the way, you will start to feel more comfortable in the relationship. Here's a story. This is really fun. I was, for a while I took some coaching. in relationships, right? So it was group coaching, and I was with a bunch of women who were dealing with difficult men, and I was listening to the coachings and watching and so forth. This woman comes in, she's like, my husband this, my husband that, and it was a long list of problems, right? And so, you know, we're all thinking, oh man, we're all feeling hopeless with her, right? And the coach is like, well, is there anything good about your husband? And she's like, she thinks a bit for a couple minutes, and she's like, well, there's this and there's that. And she continues, and as she's continuing, she starts to tear up, and she's like, oh my God, I never really saw all these things about him. And the more she followed, the more she saw the good, the more she realized he is a good person, but I haven't been seeing it. Now, not everyone is like that, but most people. You have stopped seeing it, and that's why you feel like it's hopeless. You see what I mean? So the seeing it is actually, it's not about continuing to do stuff for them. No. It's about shifting your gaze. That's the very powerful move. Does that make sense? Anybody else struggling with this teaching? Or it's COVID. Are we better now? Are you seeing more clearly? Anything still stuck for you? You good? Okay. Pawlowski.
So I know I previously tried to sort of relate to Christianity and sort of God. Would you say that the eternal love that he describes within the book, he believes is the highest form possible to achieve?
Yeah, but it's within us. It's within us, right? You don't achieve it. You tap into it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of put into like how we've seen before previously, like how in Plato where they had categorized lower love and higher love.
Ah, yes. Yes, that's a higher love, obviously, right? That's the higher love that's in us, which we need to tap into in order to survive the situation, right? I have a friend right now, he's struggling with a terrible chronic disease. He's in pain most of the time. He came to see me the other day. He said, I feel like Job, if you know this story. It's a terrible story about a man who was just in pain. Huh? Exactly. Well, he told me something very interesting. He said, I need a new heart to be able to endure this. I cannot endure this situation on the heart that I have right now. I need a new heart. And most of us, this is what we need in relationships. We need a new heart. And this gaze is a way to renew the heart. That's why it works. Because as you gaze on the person in that way and you see the good in that person, you are not only renewing them, you are renewing your own heart. And now you have what it takes to navigate the situation, no matter where it leads, right? As you were saying, yes.
Does this have the same effect as, like, if you think that you are the problem in a relationship, does it have the same effect for you to do this with yourself?
Yeah.
Or does the other have to do it for
No,
you?
you can do it for yourself too. Like, I have what it takes. I'm a good person. You can also look at yourself in love,
And
right?
that's the same
And with
exact
hope.
effect.
Absolutely. If you're always bashing yourself, I'm a terrible person. No. You can be like, no, I got what it takes. I'm a good person. Here are the good things I did. You can journal them and start to feel a little better, right? Absolutely. This works across the board, right? For the other and for yourself. Yes.
And I'm just curious, like, when your friends come up to you about like their issues and stuff like that, do you give them advice based on like philosophical thought, or is it just like how you feel in the moment you talk to them?
That's a good question. Usually when someone comes for advice, I listen a long time to see, and then the thought comes in my head. But usually I'm in a way, my thinking is nourished by the text, but the right thought cannot come from just throwing a text at them. It kind of comes in your head as they're talking. So it's kind of more intuitive. But I will quote Kierkegaard and Buber, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I invite you to do that, right? Listen to your friends for a while. Don't jump in right away. Listen to the whole thing, and then the thought will come in, and often it will be something we did in class, right? Absolutely. So yes, you're becoming therapist. Now, last point, this is the key. This is the title, right? Love hopes all things, and here's the key, and is never put to shame. Let's talk about that a little bit. Is never put to shame. That's the title of the text, right? Love hopes all things. This is page 231. Love hopes all things. Now let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the worst case scenario. Imagine you did all that. You hoped in the relationship. You really poured your heart out. You had the vision, and still the other person ends up leaving you, right? And now at that moment, you feel like an idiot, I suppose, like a fool. Like, here I am, I was hoping in you, I was looking at the best in you, and now I'm alone, right? I worked so hard to change my perspective, and I poured out my love to you, and now you have gone. And Kierkegaard is saying, well, even then, you should not be ashamed. You're not a fool. Why does he say that? Person is gone. You're like stupid. All your family is telling you, see, told you, right? How is it that you're not a fool in this moment? Yes.
Because you gained so much more than you lost.
What have you gained? You're on the right track. Tell me. What have you gained? Thank you. It's hard, right? It's like, damn, what did I gain? I don't see it. But absolutely. You lost a beloved, but you found love. You never knew you could love in this way. You never knew you had that capacity for love. You never knew you could be this type of lover, right? So even if you lose the beloved, you still find love. And like Tohid said, you have tapped into this deeper layer. You will never be the same. You will never love the same. Whoever crosses your path from now on is a lucky person. Is a lucky guy and a lucky woman going to cross your path from now on, because now you have developed a capacity for love, which is not average, right? Which is beyond average, which is the higher love, right? You have tasted, you have offered, you have tapped into the higher love, right? And so even if you lose the beloved, it was never wasted. Loving is never a waste of time. I want to say this because a lot of you get into situations and then you break up, you get a few years with somebody and then you break up and you're like, I lost all this time. I gave you the best years of my life and you feel like you wasted time. Did you though? Why? Exactly. You are not the same person now after all these years. Even if the other person didn't change, you did for the better. So guys, never feel like you waste time when you're loving someone in that way. Because even if they are staying the same, you have shifted and you have become somebody capable of a higher love. And those years is what brought you to that point. All those so-called wasted years is that what brought you to that point of being able to love in that way. And so nothing is ever wasted. When you love, it's never wasted. Not a single minute is wasted when you love, when you're becoming that type of person. Does that make sense? So do you see how I know, right? Even everybody laughing at you, everybody thinks you're an idiot, everybody thinks you're naive and blind, but actually, says Kierkegaard, you're no fool, because you have become a lover of the highest level, right? A lover of the highest sort, and only you know this, and your future beloved, right, will have a taste of that. Does that make sense? So good. Last questions before we conclude on Kierkegaard? Okay, good. So I hope you digest this. This for me is the climax. This is the best. Try to read the whole thing, right? This is one of the best texts on love that you will ever find, I think, in this world. So try to read the whole thing in the summer. Because it is really, really worth it. Really worth it. All right, next time, Buber in one shot.
Sorry, I ignored Buddy wrong.